Hi, and welcome to another segment of Mediation Works. I'm Wendy Lakusta, and I'm here with my colleague Sharon Sutherland. And we also have with us another colleague, somebody we've worked with a lot of over the years, Hugh McCall. He's a lawyer, mediator, and an arbitrator. And Hugh, we had wanted to talk a little bit, we're focusing on strata disputes in this series, so we wanted to talk a little bit about power and fairness in strata disputes.
Right.
And I know you and I talked a little bit about it ahead of time, but can you give some examples of how power issues develop in strata disputes?
Yeah. Well, I think that because stratas, people are living in such close proximity to each other, I think that it's inevitable that conflicts arise. And in any conflict, one person or the other may have maybe more empowered than another. And so I think, anyway, some of the factors that are involved are just personality issues. Some people tend to be more win-driven as opposed to consensus-driven or consensus-building. I think that you can have issues like physical disabilities that may be a source of power differences between people, mental abilities. I think can be all kinds of sources for power differences anyway. And then, I think really the question is, how do you handle that?
Yeah. That probably is where we want to go. Is like, how do you handle that?
And how do you handle that in a situation of conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many factors involved in stratas. You've got, your council, you've got your property manager, you've got your owners, you've got, owners against owners, and all of those things. Yeah. So. And
I think we each come to the world too with a greater sort of just a difference in terms of our desire to conform, or our desire to not conform actually. So if there's a rule, some people are going to break the rules. And other people are going to conform to the rules. So if there may be certain situations where just people's behaviors, people are going to do what they want to do regardless of the impact that may have on their neighbors.
Right.
And of course that results in conflict, which can be very difficult to resolve.
Yeah, and I think just you were talking power, and Wendy was kind of, when you went off, started to talk about the different dynamics where you've got kind of strata council, you've got property manager.
Yeah.
So I guess other sources of power in kind of strata disputes might also involve engagement of groups like council or groups of owners perhaps, or something like that.
Factions,
so you've actually got, I'm thinking factions and things like that.
Yeah.
So you can also have all those kind of numbers and power or positional power when you're talking council or you're talking property managers or people who might have the ability to, in some way, enforce fines or
enforce fines or levy fines or not levy fines in some cases. So you may have two different strata owners who are doing more or less the same thing. One is levied a fine and the other isn't.
Right.
Or you may have certain situations where some people are grandfathered.
Right.
And other people in very similar circumstances aren't grandfathered in terms of renting out their suite. And what are the reasons for that?
That speaks to that fairness imbalance, right?
And the objective use of power as well, like from the strata council perspective.
Sure.
And so it really depends partly on the kind of relations, I think, that people in conflict have with the larger body.
Yeah. And strata is just one of those wonderful places where people are close together and spend a lot of time nearby each other and engaged in different related activities. So,
and they have to work out problems and issues every day.
Yeah. So, can we get you to talk a little bit about ways to deal with that?
So the Act provides for arbitration.
Right.
And arbitrators are required under the Act to talk to the parties about mediation before engaging in an arbitration.
Okay.
How do you talk to people about mediation? Like, how do you explain the benefits to them?
Well, being a big fan of mediation.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do.
I'm getting a little plug in here.
But because I've done a lot of arbitration as well.
Yeah.
And, it can oftentimes be much, much more costly. I think less satisfying for the parties in the end.
Mm.
It can be way more effort.
You're talking arbitration.
We're
Yeah.
talking arbitration
more effort,
right now.
more,
Yeah.
Right.
And so mediation oftentimes I think results in a much more satisfying resolution at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that I talk to people about. Just
Sure.
cost.
Timeliness.
Timeliness, buy-in.
Yeah.
Usually when you have a mediated resolution, as we know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a much higher degree of compliance with whatever is agreed to, whatever.
So we're part of
resolution is
crafting
reached.
that, right?
And they're part of crafting it,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So usually it would happen at a pre-mediation meeting. That would happen, either with all the parties or be discussed in pre-mediation meetings with one side or the other.
Okay. So perhaps you can talk a little bit more about pre-mediation meetings and some of the strategies you use to try to balance power issues and,
Yeah.
get people so that there's an even playing field.
Right. So I think that a good place to start is actually sending people a questionnaire, just to help find out what the
okay.
issues are,
Yeah, sure.
and get a sense of how they see things.
Mm-hmm.
What's bothering them about the current conflict that they're involved in, what they see as potential resolutions, and that can be then used as a basis for pre-mediation meetings with both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, or the multiple parties, if that's
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah, I was going to say at Strata, it's certainly not just both sides necessarily.
Yeah, that could be
I mean,
multiple
it could
sides.
be owner, it could be owner, strata council, it
Yeah.
could be owner, property manager, it could be
Yeah.
the number of parties. So if you get everyone's point of view and then have a pre-mediation meeting with each party,
Mhm.
that's an opportunity to explain more about what mediation is all about,
Mhm.
how the process will work, whether they have any concerns with the process.
Mhm.
So it's your opportunity with the questionnaire and the pre-mediation meeting. It's an opportunity to get a sense of where the power lies,
Right.
or where there may be power imbalances, or where people's concerns lie. Do they have any hesitation about mediation? What is that hesitation?
Right.
And so they get a chance to describe where they're most uncomfortable in a separate meeting with the mediator prior to bringing everyone together.
So those kinds of concerns that might be coming up, when they're saying, I don't think they'll listen to me, or I feel bullied when I'm in the room with them, so I'm really uncomfortable. I'm not sure I can say these things in front of somebody. I'm thinking those are all the sorts of things people might be feeling. They might not be calling it a power thing in their own mind, but it will come out in those meetings.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, is so-and-so going to be at the mediation?
Right.
If there's a personal conflict,
Right.
those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so, the mediator is tuned into those kind of comments,
Mhm.
and it allows you to kind of get a sense in advance and to strategize with people about what would make them comfortable given that set of factors in moving forward in the mediation.
Right. Yeah, and so working with anybody who was expressing those kinds of concerns to figure out different ways to hold the process, or how far does that go, strategizing?
I think different ways to hold the process. Who's going to be participating in the mediation?
Yeah, sometimes you have a pre-mediation meeting just about that.
Yeah, just about that.
Yeah.
What will be the physical setting of the mediation?
Okay.
What are the, do they understand that there will be caucusing through the mediation, for example, that will allow them to express discomfort going forward? Or do you need to start with, I don't think, in our classic model, everyone comes together for the beginning of the mediation, but, if there was really a problem, presumably you could quickly break into separate sessions with people.
So you can modify the process. Just
Modify
make
the
sure everybody
process.
feels safe.
Yeah. It could be them bringing their team to the mediation
Right.
for support.
Right.
you
Okay.
know. And then you'd have to negotiate whether all of those people are appropriate people to have in the mediation with, the other sides or the other people who are participating.
Right.
And discuss. It's an open kind of process, mediation.
Yeah.
And so those kind of things, in a respectful way and in appropriate circumstances, can be discussed even as a group.
That sounds great. Yeah. So you do a lot of pre-work before the mediation, and that helps it to be successful, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the bulk of it, I don't think, but certainly it helps.
Sure.
And certainly in terms of identifying power issues and doing some early strategizing about how to overcome power differences to make it a fair process.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you just a chance for a couple final thoughts, Hugh, because we're really kind of at the end of our time here. What we haven't talked about.
It's okay.
What we haven't talked about is kind of the things that might happen during the mediation besides things we planned about, but I think that might be just too big of a question. Is there something that you would really like to make sure that we mention in terms of power and these kind of disputes?
I think it's just really important as the mediator, of course, to be tuned into the shifts that happen during mediation.
Right.
And that's the kind of time when you would probably suggest separate meetings with the parties. And or just even at the beginning of mediation, making sure that the people who are are in the room who need to be in the room in order to make a successful mediation.
And setting the ground rules around respectability and good communication, that kind of thing.
It's interesting. I think we all have different sensitivities in that regard.
Yeah.
And I'm a very non-didactic, what I think of a non-didactic kind of approach to mediation in terms of not setting hard and fast rules at the beginning, but letting the process flow and hopefully modeling the kind of respect that I like to see the parties exhibit toward each other. But then, of course, becoming involved and in terms of establishing ground rules if I think it's getting out of hand.
Okay, good. Well, no, that's great. Thank you so much for coming out and
Thanks.
talking to us.
So good to see you guys.
It's been great.